Let's talk about these upcoming anti-ICE and pro-ICE and anti-Muslim protests that are all scheduled to happen like this weekend. And I'm not going to tell you what to do, how to do, when to do, any of that type of stuff. Be political about it. But I will say this, there are going to be times in your life that you have to make decisions. And this might be one of those weekends that you make decisions to try to keep yourself or your family a little bit safer. And it's very like easily forecastable. Now, in last year, we had two major protests. They were both over the No Kings protest that they had. The No Kings protest was really geared towards not a specific event as in like, hey, this is happening and we're gonna get out there and we're gonna protest it and we're pissed off about it, etc., etc. This, as we all know, that Immigration and Custom Enforcement, along with Custom and Border Patrol, have thousands of different agents in the Twin City area, St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota area. And a lot of folks are not happy about it. We're gonna have a quick AeroPress, quick drip, got shit to do, wanna knock this out real fast. And it's to the point where these are being large scale organized. Like in my area alone, 3 scheduled protests near me. Expect them to be big, expect them to be well funded, and expect for me to avoid them. But I gotta go outside, I got shit to do. My kids have cheerleading. I'm preparing to get ready to go to Vegas for SHOT Show. My son has a birthday party this weekend. Like I gotta be outside, but I'm still gonna be vigilant. And since I may not be able to avoid them, let me just tell you some things to do if you can. First, why you should not go or why you should avoid an anti-ICE protest this weekend. I think it's needless to say, but they are unpredictable. I mean, at the end of the day, the unpredictability of them, the potential escalation for them to just grow faster than you expected, it's there. And so why would you purposely go to those? I understand we have the right to protest, freedom to protest, all that good stuff. I just don't particularly think it's the best idea ever to do that, to purposely go out and find yourself protesting, and you just never know how quickly this stuff can escalate. And so because you don't know how fast this stuff can escalate, I always recommend that you just avoid going to the situations altogether. So you never know if there is a bad actor within the group, if there is someone that's easily rattled, that's not necessarily a bad actor, but that group think within a large protest is a thing. Some people become very irrational, start ripping weapons out the back of ICE vehicles. Yes, that happened this weekend where they literally, like dummies, were using a truck to hook up to the back of ICE vehicles and steal FBI rifles. Yeah, don't do that. Okay, you're on camera, you're gonna get caught. I hope you guys get in trouble. But the risk of being in the crossfire is the second thing you have to think about. And so you could be an innocent bystander, you can be easily caught in the middle of a confrontation, tear gas, projectiles, stampedes, fireworks. Those are all real possibilities. The accident casualties, you becoming an accident, you not being fully ready and capable for your family is a real thing. Whether you're pro or anti-ICE, I probably wouldn't go to either one of them. Legal ramifications. Even if you sit crisscross leg in the middle of a freaking parking lot and decide that you're peacefully protesting something that's going on, you still can face legal ramifications for unlawful assembly. Even if you're not participating, it can lead to a detention or arrest. And law enforcement has a lot of broad strokes in those type of situations. They have a lot of mandates, things that they have to do to ensure that the public is doing, being as not orderly, because at the end of the day, it's a freaking protest, but just not complete chaos. And so proving your innocence after that might be a headache that you just don't need, and you may want to avoid it. I'm not telling you that you won't be able to prove your innocence, because this is America and we are innocent until proven guilty, but it's still an effing headache to even have to concern yourself with it. So that would be a reason why I would probably avoid it altogether. Beyond that, there is targeted violence. You don't know, because these are scheduled events, what people are cooking, what people are brewing up. Like, it is a possibility that there are people who are literally, as we speak, deciding that they're gonna make certain things happen and do certain things at these protests. And if you're there for whatever reason, you could put yourself potentially in the crosshairs for a targeted attack because they don't like the fact that you're at this particular type of rally or that particular type of rally. They're a step above being a bad actor. A bad actor is somebody who could be easily influenced. Maybe they're always a bad apple, got a little bit of a rap sheet, whatever. An extremist is someone that goes out there with a plan, and a targeted violence is something that can happen. Disruption to infrastructure, into services. Protests can lead to shutdown of roads, public transportation, local businesses, people shuttering up doors. Listen, for us, school is closed on Monday, so people are going to already have more energy to be out this weekend. A lot of people are going to be outside because they're off work on Monday. I'm taking off all next week because of SHOT Show. But there's already a lot of people who are going to be off and have like a lot of shit that they can just run around and do. Propaganda and provocations is something else you have to think about. So these are always elements for these type of events. You could inadvertently become a prop. Pause. Why are these protests happening in the first place? A little bit over a week ago, Renee Good was shot and killed in Minnesota by an ICE agent who is an Iraq vet. He has 20 years of like just different aspects of federal service, and he is trained to seek out people and detain them. Now, arguably to say he may have been in fear for his life, you know, that's off of the legal system. But at the end of the day, the shooting occurred and people are pissed off about it. Some people are pissed off that people are mad at him. So you got two different sides that are very, very mad. And you could become a prop. You could become used as an instrument, because President Trump said 2 days ago that if Minneapolis can't get their shit together, I'm paraphrasing, that he's thinking about invoking the Insurrection Act, which has not been invoked since the Rodney King riots in the early 1990s. It gives so much broad leverage for the military to be in the streets, and they would have arrest powers, more Fourth Amendment powers, be able to do search and seizures. They would be more like police, and all of a sudden your brethren would be in the streets and they would be doing policing type of activities, which puts them in a weird position overall. When you're gonna have folks in this, and one thing I wanna say about that is that this is probably the most diverse our military has ever been. And a lot of folks in the military, I got an old fling of mine, a good friend of mine, she is super vocal, anti-ICE, she's still active duty. I'm surprised she's allowed to be that vocal, but nonetheless, those are folks that would still have their opinions, would be activated, and they would possibly be using the Insurrection Act. The president has so much power when it comes to that. You go to these protests, you become a prop, it could be a reason to invoke the Insurrection Act. So why does this matter to preppers and to EDC folks, everyday carry type of people? The link to the civil unrest is what I want you to think about. Anticipating civil unrest is something that a prepper should be able to do. You carry weapons, gray man material, you have all the stockpile of food, the ability to walk home on foot. Let me take a sip of my freshly brewed coffee. And so if you're a prepper, or if you're an everyday carry type of person who is always prepared for stuff, this is an easily predictable event. And so regardless of the specific cause, regardless if you agree or disagree with it, it's a clear indicator of potential civil unrest and you should avoid it. Situational awareness is paramount. And so we have a lot of situational awareness at the crib. A lot of times I find myself going to sleep late and waking up early, because inherently I'm always thinking about situational awareness here at the crib, just wondering about hot spots and dead zones, and do I hear a creak in the night, and what was that noise? And it's always a part of my daily routine. This is an interruption to most people's daily routine, and you should know and think about it. Testing your everyday carry and your bug out plans and procedures, this is the time to do it. You start planning, start testing it out. I would recommend you plan to bug in more than bugging out, but this will be the day to actually crack open your gear. Are your pouches or your possible pouches fully put together? Are your bags prepared? Do you have a stockpile of water? What if the electricity is cut off? What if there is an insurrection? Let's just say worst case scenario, insurrection acts mixed with a little bit of quartering. Like this is like the most unpredictable thing that could ever happen. But let's just say the Constitution be damned, and we get a little bit of insurrection act sprinkled in with some quartering. Now all of a sudden you gotta, you're forced to possibly house a couple of soldiers here and there. I'm just saying. Think about worst case scenario, because I'll be thinking about that shit all the time. And I don't think there's going to be a major supply chain disruption. This is a scheduled weekend of stuff, but this could follow on to more stuff that goes beyond this. I fired up my cameras behind me because I was just about to talk about why I think we're not done with Iran yet, and how we're probably going to do some military strikes. Then I started seeing literally emails and notifications for these protests in my area. And I thought, well, I don't plan to go to them, but I might run into them. Let me fire up a video. But I don't think there's gonna be a major disruption to supply chain. Now, extended periods of civil unrest, extended Insurrection Act invocations, God forbid we're put into martial law, of course, there will be supply chain disruptions, but I don't think any of those things are gonna happen. I may eat crow next week or this weekend, but that's just kind of like my immediate predictions. Do a home security assessment, look at your bug out, bug in your EDC gear, and then think about a communication breakdown. What's your plan if your area, we just had a crazy large Verizon outage earlier this week when they basically had to fall on their sword and come in with hat in hand and apologize for being shitty at conducting their services. Now, I'm on Google Fi. I don't know who the hell carries Google Fi's towers, but my shit was working during that outage. But what if that happens to you? What's your secondary plan? Cell phone towers get overloaded, they go out again, power outages can occur. How are you gonna communicate with your loved ones in the immediate? Do you have a plan for that? Do you have a prearranged meetup area? Yeah. Do you have a prearranged communication plan? Hopefully you do. Today, you got time. You still have time to put the shit together. And then think about the psychological toll. Another shit. Low-level civil unrest that you see on your TV, it does a little bit of a psychological toll, but now we're being faced with a lot of protests around the country. That can play a significant part with your psyche, with your calm, rational mindset. And if you find yourself into those situations, you want to find a way to not get caught up in an emotional whirlwind because of these events and activities. That's why I say I think you should avoid them. Now, do I think that this could occur and eventually lead to a civil war? No. I said this during the live stream. I'm not a historian, but I do hope to be an old man that just teaches at a college one day. And what's going on right now, where the rich feel super duper rich, and then we that are not super rich feel super duper like prices are going up, and we feel like we can't get ahead, and it feels like there's Americans versus Americans. This all happened also during Reconstruction. After the Civil War, the late 19th century, before the turn of 1900, we had areas where the rich during the Gilded Age were stupid rich, and the poor or the middle class just felt like they really weren't progressing. On top of that, American versus women still couldn't vote. People of color were allowed to vote technically, but oftentimes they were forbidden to vote, whether it was a poll tax, or if you couldn't read, you weren't allowed to vote, or all of a sudden they would be practicing shooting right outside the election booths, stuff like that. And so there was all that type of hostility. In the South, there was still a lot of hostility from Southern Democrats who were super racist, and they're super anguished about losing the Civil War. And it was just so much going on, and that did not lead to another civil war. I would argue to say that the Gilded Age, the late 19th century, and all that was more intense than what's going on right now. So do I think that this can be resolved in different ways, whether it's elections or people calming down the temperature or some type of world event? I don't think that we're going to spiral into civil war. If you're watching channels that are predicting that, ask them to give you an example since the end of the Civil War that was more prolific than this and it didn't resolve itself, because they can't do it. And I still think that one of the most momentous events in American history is when the South attacked Gettysburg, and it was just like one of the most momentous events in the Civil War, and just how it eventually brought the resolve to wanting to get that war ended. And we lost so many people that day. And I don't think we ever want to have that event happen again. So I think that you should avoid the hot zones, maintain situational awareness, review and refine your preps, defer your judgment, and be decisive, but take your time before you just make quick decisions. And I just think personally that you should have a plan for the weekend. My plan is to go outside, celebrate my son's 5th birthday, prepare for SHOT Show, still do some shit. I want to see Mrs. X dressed down in some sexy shit this weekend. So we still gonna step outside. But if you can avoid it, I would say do that. First time stopping by, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you part of the battalion. If this is not your first time stopping by, well, thank you once again for watching me run my great. For everyone else, we'll speak soon.